Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome to Big 12 Insiders. Man, a lot to talk about today. I got some emails and stuff, and, some people wanted to talk about some things, so I thought, today's midweek. We're not diving into the Houston in the Final Four just yet, so might as well bring this to the conversation. I'm sure this won't be the only time that we talk about this during the offseason once that hits. But today we're going to talk about the Big 12 hoops hierarchy. For years, you could decades, it was Kansas. Kansas was that team. I mean, when you thought of Big 12 and you thought of Big 12 hoops, you thought of Kansas. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't other good teams that were in the Big 12. There were, but I don't even know. I mean, how many years did Kansas win it in a row? Wasn't it like 15 years in a row or something crazy like that? Having said all of that, there were other good teams, but Kansas was that squad. That is no longer the case. It's no longer the case. So we're going to dive into number one, who is at the top of the heap right now, and is this just a blip for Kansas? And what the Big 12, what does that mean for the Big 12? We're going to dive into all of that today. So I appreciate you guys. Again, remember, like, follow, subscribe if you have not already subscribed, and continue to get in to that comment section, and always hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. So, first off, let's talk about the hierarchy as of right now. It's Houston. Houston is at the top of the heap of the Big 12. Now, there's people that talk about, and you see it all over social media, well, how can you say that Houston runs the Big 12? It's only been 2 years. Well, they've only been in the conference for 2 years. And they won it the first year. And this year, they won it in even more dominant fashion. Now, if you want to count conference tournament, great. They won that this year as well. But they won the conference this year by 4 games. 4. Not, hey, it was a tiebreaker and they won. Not they won by 1, 2, even 3 games. They won it by 4 games, and they lost 1 time. Out of 20 conference games, they lost once. Now, it's not an even schedule. I'm not here to tell you that they play everybody, twice. They didn't blow out everybody. BYU fans don't want to hear me say that, and I apologize. But they didn't blow out everybody, but they won. They won on the road. They won at home. They came back in close games on the road. They came back in close games at home. They won the games. So you don't have to necessarily say, because I've said this a million times, that they just don't dominate everybody. They just win. And I'll say it again. You can win every single basketball game by 1 point. They'll still give you a national championship trophy at the end of it. They still will. It doesn't matter if you win by 1 or you win by 100. If you win every game, national champion is what you get called. Period. End of story. I love the style that they play. They've made shots this year. They can shoot the basketball this year, which is what separated them from years past. They're starting to recruit at a high level. You look, I saw this thing on Instagram yesterday where it was ranking the starting lineups, not ranking them, but giving the star ratings when guys coming out of high school, what their star rankings were. Houston was second. Duke obviously is first because Duke is going to have nothing but 5 stars, and they do. But Houston was second as far as the team with the highest rated guys. And you wouldn't think that would necessarily be the case, but it is. They were second, ahead of Auburn, ahead of Florida. And they're starting to recruit at an even higher level now, especially in a day and age of NIL. I don't know what Houston's NIL is. I heard that it's not as high, not as much as other teams. And I can believe that because the style that Houston plays and what Kelvin Sampson brings to the table, those guys buy in. They want to be, first of all, they want to be coached. They accept tough coaching, which is difficult in this day and age. Just everybody be honest about it. Kids are not the same. Sometimes they can be sensitive. Hell, I was sensitive when I played. I didn't like being screamed at. I had to have a conversation with my position coach, and I told him, I said, look, man, my father was a football coach. I know the difference between hard coaching and humiliation. I will not respond to humiliation. I make a mistake, correct me, scream at me, whatever it is. But don't humiliate me just because. So I understand being sensitive. So I'm not just calling kids sensitive. I was the same way. Didn't like it and didn't respond to it. But I did know the difference because I had been around it my whole life. But kids are different these days, but they accept it. But I don't know, again, I'm not saying that Kelvin Sampson does the whole humiliation. I just know if he wants to make a correction, he gets in your face and he makes the correction. We've seen it a million times. I love that he, number one, that he does that. But number two, his team buys into it. Like I said, they accept the coaching. And that's another thing. You're not going to Houston expecting something different. Like, you're not going to go to Houston expecting everything to be, rosy sunshine and expecting to be coddled. If that's what you want, and I'm not saying you're wrong if you do, but Houston isn't the place for you. Well, Houston is starting to get 5 stars left and right now. Why is that? Because guys know, hey, man, this guy's going to get the most out of me. He's going to get me to the next level. And again, Houston's NIL might be great. Again, I don't know. So I don't, me, I don't speak on stuff that I don't know about. I just don't. I learned that a long time ago. I don't know is a good answer. Although sometimes people say that's not, especially when you're a kid and your mom or dad asks you a question, that's usually not a good answer. But as an adult, it is. Hey, I don't know. So I don't talk about it. But they're starting to get those recruits. And right now, anybody with a brain cell that pays attention to the Big 12 will tell you Houston is at the top of the heap. So the big question is, who's next? To me, it's Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is next. I think BYU is right in that conversation. Again, 2 schools that NIL has become a big part of what they're doing. They say, okay, NIL is it. This is part of it. We're going to participate, and we're going to try to be good. And I don't fault anybody for that. We're going to go out, do the things that are necessary to be good within the rules, which basically anything is legal these days. So we're going to go out and do it. Period. End of story. Okay. You could say Iowa State. I think Iowa State's at another – they got to start having some tournament success. Last year, they should have went past the Sweet 16. They should have. And, I mean, Iowa State fans, you could be mad at me all you want, but if you're being honest with yourself, you got upset. You should have moved further than that. You absolutely should have. You were better than that. We saw you be better than that. This past year, I'll give Iowa State fans grace. They were beat up. I didn't have you going past the round of 32, and you didn't. You beat up. And it wasn't just that Keyshawn Gilbert was out. Guys within, all through your roster and basically all year long, you dealt with injuries. Well, what are you going to do? If your team is injured to key guys, what are you supposed to do? It is what it is. But I would put Iowa State at the next realm. Now, I know what people are going to say. Well, come on, B, you're leaving out Kansas. And I'm not leaving out Kansas. I guess the conversation is, where do we put Kansas? Where should we put them? I'm not putting them with Houston. I would guess that you put them in that next realm, right below Houston. Because Houston, since they've come into the league, is better than Kansas. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But Kansas has taken a step back. They just have. And here's the thing with NIL that nobody has. I shouldn't say that. Again, Kansas NIL is incredible, but there's teams that have better. Okay. But Kansas can pay anybody. They can do what they want with NIL. Okay. They can do exactly what they want. But they also missed. And when you miss, you take a step back. Kansas took a step back this year. And it's wild because early in the season, Kansas was good. Nobody got hurt. Like they didn't, a starter didn't go down for, and missed 25 games, or I think KJ Adams might have missed 3. Oh, and by the way, the guy that replaced him played better than he did. But then his minutes got cut down, and now he's out the door. So I don't know what's going on with Kansas. Is it, are they next realm? Are they in the Iowa State tier? Excuse me. I don't know. But it seems, and look, I'm not the guy that piles on, but once the playing field got leveled and Kansas, I mean, they won the national championship in 2022. And now, did anybody think Kansas was winning the national title this year? No. Basically, when conference season started, they were like, this is not the same Kansas team that we saw beat Duke earlier in the year. Like, it's not the same team. And it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. Now, part of that is teams figured Kansas out. Dickinson can't guard. Adams can't score. Their best interior defender, they only want to play him 15 minutes a night. And they have one guy that can really shoot it. Everybody else can't. They brought in some transfers. It seems like the bright lights were a little bit too bright at Kansas, and they couldn't handle it. And this is what you got. That was the end result. Yeah, that was the end result. Can things be better at Kansas? Absolutely. For Kansas reloads, man. And I'm going to kiss their butt for a minute. Kansas reloads. This is not a school that has to, we got to start all over and rebuild. That ain't Kansas. They don't have to do that. They're a much better program than that. But you can't deny what we've seen the last couple of years. And as numbers and things have gotten bigger with NIL and transfer portal and all these different things, Kansas has not been at the top of the heap. Now, can that change? Yes. Is it just a matter of finding the right people? Absolutely. But you got to find them. You got to find them, and there'll be a lot of Kansas fans out there. As much as they like DeJuan Harris, you got to get a point guard that can shoot the basketball. And, I'm not going to pile on a kid. I'm not going to do that. But that's kind of what college basketball is today. You got to have a guard that can handle himself, but he can also shoot the basketball. It's a guard game. It's a guard-driven game. It just is. The days of just throwing it into the post and having that guy, even though it's a lot better in college than it is in the NBA, you still got to have a guard that can control the pace of the game, how you want to play, but they also got to be able to shoot the basketball. And if they can't, it's a problem. It's a big, big problem. So, and the guys that they brought in, maybe to challenge or be an extension of that, like I mentioned before, I'm not going to say by names, but Kansas fans know who I'm talking about. The lights were way too bright at Kansas because, again, the lights are pretty damn bright at Kansas, and either you can handle it or you can't. And a few of those guys that they brought in this year, they just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. But that's not anybody. That's not you don't know until you get there. Bill Self doesn't know. He's thinking this guy was good here. Our system is just as good, if not better. You're going to have access to other really good players to play with. That should make it easier for you. When you play with better players, it should make things easier for you. Sometimes it just doesn't, though. Sometimes that pressure of putting on that Kansas jersey is too much. So that's where I go with them. Now, think about the other programs like BYU. I put BYU on the same realm, because I believe BYU with Tech, with the NIL, with the way they're recruiting, and the coach that they have, the coach, that has to matter, people. That has to matter. I thought BYU got so much better during the season, it wasn't even funny. Heck, Kevin Young even came out and said it early on. I'm not used to practice. And you're thinking, come on, Big B, what do you mean he's not used to practice? The guy came from the NBA. They don't practice this much. NBA, they're playing 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week, and traveling. They don't have time for practice. College, you do. College has practice time. So he was getting used to the practice time and getting used to the schedule. And maybe it took him a while. He's the first-year coach at BYU, getting used to his players. Again, the schedule. And once they got it figured out, they got on a roll and played really good basketball. BYU will be better next year, or they should be. I mean, you know how that goes, but they should be better next year. I think they're going to get in the transfer portal. I think they're going to get some more guys. I think BYU is here to stay. Tech is here to stay. Now, there's another team that I'm leaving out, and I'm not leaving them out. I just wanted to bring them up last, is Arizona. Where do you put the Arizona Wildcats? Because coming into the league, people said Arizona was going to be right at the top of the heap. Well, I believe that. I believe they're not the Houston level, but at that next level, Arizona is absolutely there. Absolutely there. You're kidding yourself if you don't think they are. You're kidding yourself. Look at their coach, how good he is. Look at the recruiting that Arizona does. The NIL that they have that I've heard. Again, when I don't know, I don't speak about it. What I've heard is that Arizona doesn't take a back seat to anybody with their NIL and basketball. That's just what I heard. Arizona fans will be able to say if, ands, or buts and tell me yes or no to that. But either way, Arizona's in that conversation as far as Tech, as far as BYU. I think they're going to be here for a long time. And if you're not careful, Arizona's going to take a step forward. I just believe that. You know, now you have your Baylors, which I think they're a step below Iowa State. I think they're in a rung below Iowa State. So let's recap. You got Houston at the top as far as the hierarchy. They have to be at the top, people. I mean, what are we doing? Below that, you got Arizona. You got Texas Tech. You have BYU. And now I'm not just basing this off of this year, this basketball season. Now, that has something to do with it, but I'm not basing that solely on what happened this year. But I think you also have to put Kansas there, too, because I think it was a blip on what happened with Kansas, maybe the last 2 years. I think Bill Self is going to go, you know what? I kind of sold out my principles and what I actually believe in. I'm going to go out and do things the way I want to do them, the way that I've done them in the past, build a team the way I want to build it. Granted, NIL has a lot to do with it. And again, let's not kid ourselves about Kansas. Kansas is one of those teams, just like everybody else. Everybody was cheating. You know, everybody was cheating. Kansas got caught doing the same thing that Oklahoma State, NC State, Louisville, and a handful of other teams got caught doing. Paying guys, but funneling it through shoe companies. They just didn't get punished. You know, but now that the playing field is a little bit more level, Kansas got to do a little bit more due diligence. They got to get better. You know, teams caught up to them. Houston passed them. So now they got to dig in. They got to dig in. That's a tough year for Kansas fans, but it's just the truth. Arizona, I don't think Arizona got past. I think this is just where Arizona is. They're just on that second realm. But I would warn people, and I say warn, I would caution people that although Arizona is as big as it is in the basketball hierarchy, people know Arizona is a brand. Blue blood, no. Brand, absolutely. They're in that second tier, you know, the Michigan State level, the Louisville level, Arizona level. They are right there below, just below that blue blood standing. And I know Arizona fans are going to go, oh, we are blue blood. No, you're not. No, you're not. And it's okay. It's okay. Relax. But I would say this. Arizona, as big as they are, I still believe they're a sleeping giant because I think there's another level that Arizona can go to. I think they're in a better conference. I think this is a better conference than what the Pac-12 was. Now, you can call me biased. I'm sure there's Utah fans out there. No, it isn't. You know what? Your conference is over. And that's why you left. Or you got saved. But whatever. But the bottom line is, I just think Arizona is a sleeping giant. I know that's crazy talk, as big as they are. I just do. I just think there's another level they can get to. I think there's another level that Arizona can get to. That's how much respect I have for that program. And that's as big as they are. I think it's just starting. I think with everything and the way that college basketball is now, I think it's just starting for Arizona. I really do. Now, they got to start having some success in the tournament. And this past year, although they lost in the Sweet 16, I don't know anybody that's going to say that Arizona had a bad tournament. I don't think there's a human being that knows anything about how college basketball is going to say, oh, man, Arizona was a disappointment in the tournament. No, they were not. They gave Duke their best game. Literally, Arizona played their best, and it just happened to be not good enough because they were going against, in my opinion, the best team in the country. But that's okay. That's okay. I think there's another level. Houston is at the level. We need Houston to win a national championship. It's going to be tough this year. Duke is really, really good. But I think Houston might have some answers. We'll get into that. We'll get into it later in the week. And I didn't really talk about Iowa State much because, again, Iowa State's got to start having some success in the tournament. That's the thing. You know, I didn't talk about Baylor much, although Baylor, 2021 national champion, it slid. They've slid since then. They got to get it back. They recruit well. They do that. And maybe Baylor is on the same level as an Iowa State. Matter of fact, I would put Baylor, if I have to say this over again, I would put Baylor on the same level as an Iowa State. Absolutely. Absolutely. Big B was wrong. I can admit I was wrong. Put them on the same level. And they deserve it. They deserve it. But that's where I'm at with the people. That's where I am at with it. Houston, Texas Tech, or Houston, top tier. Just below Texas Tech, BYU, Kansas, Arizona, Iowa State, Baylor, and then everybody else. Everybody else. Now, there can be some teams that get up there that can move into this hierarchy, but that's where I would put it as of now. If you don't agree, get in that comment section. Let me know. I appreciate everybody, man. We'll start getting into this Final Four. We're going to do live tomorrow. So we'll be live tomorrow. Make sure you guys show up. We have a ton of questions, a ton of comments. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. I appreciate you guys, man. Thank you, and we will talk to you later.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.